Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. This is Allied School Nushaira campus. It's our biology class for 10th. Today's topic is interactions in the ecosystem. This is on your page number 131. Before going further, we would first discuss what an ecosystem is. Actually, this is a recalling of the definition of ecosystem. So what is ecosystem? Ecosystem is the natural area where living organisms and their environment interact and exchange materials between them. It's important for the living organisms to depend on each other. Each other means that all the biotic factors depend on the biotic factors as well as the abiotic factors. How do they depend on biotic factors? Do you have any idea? That is the interaction. Biotic with biotic factors, it's the interaction. That can we survive without consuming the plants? Obviously no. This means that we being human beings depend on who? Depend on producers. Right? So there is an interaction between us. Right? Similarly, we also depend on the air or on our atmosphere. That is, nitrogen is present there, oxygen is present there, carbon dioxide is present there. We do depend on all these things. So that is the dependence of living organisms on the abiotic factors, or sometimes we can survive in the temperature. Sometimes when the temperature increases, we could not survive there, right? So there are various factors on which we really depend on, and that dependence, that interaction between the living organisms with the environment is called as ecosystem, as well as the exchange of materials between us. Between us means that living organisms and the environment, there is a continuous exchange of the materials or these chemicals. Sometimes it changes into other forms. If you remember all your nitrogen cycle, oxygen cycle, carbon cycle. So that is the case. There was an ecosystem. So ecosystem is a natural area where living organisms and their environment interact and exchange materials between them. For what purpose? For their survival. Right? Now, whenever, if you remember, in just my last few lines, I said again and again that is interaction. I have used the word interaction. So, how do we interact? There are two types of interaction among living organisms. What are these? Interaction is of two types. Number one is intraspecific interaction, and the other is interspecific, right? Interspecific interactions. So intraspecific interaction is that interaction which occurs between the members of the same species, whereas interspecific interaction is that type of interaction which occurs between members of different species. So if you remember, what do we say? We say that usually the hierarchy is that there are different species. When same species combine together, they make a population, right? And when different populations combine together, so we say they make community. And today we are reading and we are understanding just the interactions in this community, that how species depend on species and how populations depend on other populations. So if you look over here, this is intraspecific competition. Intraspecific competition is a competition for resources. Don't go for competition now. Just try to understand the meaning of intraspecific and interspecific. So intraspecific is which type of interaction? Which occurs between same species. Same species means which can occur between line and line, right? Line and line fights with each other. For what purpose? For the purpose to get food because their resources are same. Both of them want to have the rule over the forest, right? Similarly, men versus men, men fight, men compete with other men. So whenever there is the interaction between same species or within a population, population means many species, not many species, only one species, but a number of these species or thousands of the same species living in an area, hundreds of the same species living in an area is called population. So when they compete with each other, when they interact with each other, we call it as intraspecific interaction. Whereas in the case of interspecific interaction, what happens? Different species or different populations interact with each other. For example, lion and leopards, lion and tigers, they fight or they compete with each other, right? Now these interactions are of three main types. They are, number one is what is that? That is competition. Second is predation. And third is symbiosis. Right? So competition is can be of for different things. For example, competition can be among these organisms for temperature. How is this? Let's take an example of trees in a forest. If you ever been to a forest, so what is the case? There are many small grasses, mosses, lichens on the land of the forest. But then some species of plants are taller to some centimeters, then some are to some millimeters, some to meters, and many to hundreds of meters, right? So if you look here, what happens? Usually the coniferous are the tallest trees, that is a competition among them. These trees want to compete with the other. Why do they compete? They compete because they need the sun rays or the heat of the sun more as compared to the other species. And in such a case, what do? They goes higher, and then they reach to the tallest height where they feel safe. Right? So that is the competition among different species of the same plant species, but they are different. So what did we observe? We observed that there are many tall trees. And why are they tall? That is because of the function or because of the competition among these plants with other plants. Right? Now what will happen? As these plants need more sun radiation, more heat, so they will grow more. Whereas the other plants, if they can survive in the shade, they will survive. Otherwise, we will say that we cannot find them anymore in this forest. They will simply extinct. Right? So in competition, you always have to keep in mind that one species wins, whereas the other species has to lose. The species which wins is called as superior, or the species which loses, that is called as inferior. Right? So whenever there is a competition, one always get benefit, whereas the others might get benefit because if they want to survive, they can survive in shade. So obviously this tall tree has given it shade. But if it also needed the sun, so who won the competition? The tallest tree won the competition, and so this small tree now cannot exist. It will obviously be suppressed, right? So we will say that it is inferior and it lost. So if you look here, That is intraspecific competition. Intraspecific competition is always for resource between members of the same species. Intra means same species. Resources means it may be food. They may fight for food. They may fight to survive. Fight doesn't mean that always they have to attack. No. But they compete, right? Okay. Whereas interspecific competition is the competition among different species inhabiting in same ecological area, and that is also for resources. Okay, now when lines fight with lines, what do we observe? We observe that some lines are being divided, whereas some lines have won, right? So in this case, the reduction of the fitness of both individuals occur. What does it mean? That one will be died, whereas the other will be harmed or will be wounded, right? Okay, and whereas in interspecific competition, one species suppresses due to the competition. How do it suppresses? That is, one species completely dies off and the other species, being a superior one, wins the race. Okay, so it occurs for all types of requirements. Intraspecific competition. What do we mean by all type of requirements? All types of requirement means that obviously if they belong to same species, so all of their needs would be same. All the needs would be same. That is, they would need same food, they would need same water, they would need same area to live, they would need same partner for mating, right? So they usually fight for all these purposes, especially for mating purpose. And in interspecific competition, that is for a specific requirement. For example, lions and tigers, lions and leopards or lions and tigers, they fight with each other for what purpose? For the purpose of food. For example, there is a wolf. So obviously this wolf is the food for lion as well as it is a food for leopard. So both of them would try to reach to this wolf. But before reaching the wolf, first they have to show who is the superior. So whoever is the superior, that would obviously reach to the wolf, right? So this competition is for a specific requirement, whereas intraspecific competition is for all requirements. I have shown minus sign over here, same minus sign over here, but there the minus signs are almost equal because one gets harmed and both of them are loses their fitness, right? And whereas in this case one gets, or one is suppressed and the other one isn't suppressed, it is superior then. But when it is superior, then obviously it fights with its own species member, then it becomes to be intraspecific. So these minus signs shows that both of the individuals are affected, right? Okay, moving towards the other type of interaction, that is predation. Now what is predation? Predation is the killing and being killed interaction. It always happens between two different species or two different populations. What happens here? In this case, the predator, there are two main organisms. One is predator and the other one is prey. So predator always attacks on what? Attacks on prey, whereas the prey is always being attacked by what? By a predator. So the prey is attacked and then it is killed by a predator. And what do predator do? Predator feeds on this prey. It is the superior in this case, whereas prey is not the superior. So this all, if you look here and in that competition side, so what is the case? That is obviously one has to be superior and the one has to be suppressed. Why is that? If it doesn't happen, then obviously the what we can say, their species or their population would be increased too much, so that they would occupy the whole land, and then it would be difficult to control them. For example, if there are no predators, as in the case of Australia, there were no predators for the rabbits. And what did rabbits did? Rabbits had eaten all of the farms, all of the fields, and obviously there were no predators. Then they introduced predators and these rabbits were killed by them. So that is the case, that all these things, predator, prey, intraspecific competition, they are required to run a stable ecological process. Okay, moving towards the third one, there are some plants as well which are known as predator plants. So look over here in your book. Okay, there are some predator plants. Predator plants means that they would kill other organisms. Other organisms, what are those? Those are some insects. So if you look at their adaptations, these are their leaves. So all their leaves are quite colorful, and because of these colorful leaves, the insects are attracted towards them. So when insects come over here, they have some enzymes which are then secreted by them, and the insects cannot survive in those enzymes, and ultimately they die. When they die, they are decomposed there, and all the nutrients from the insects goes inside the plant. So usually these plants grow where there is less nutrients in the soil. You probably have seen many cartoons where there are plants and they eat other organisms, sometimes the living organisms, sometimes the frogs, etc. So why is that? That is because they secrete some enzymes, right? But they do not eat them in such case that they don't have teeth. But what happens, that their prey cannot survive when those dry enzymes are being removed or by being introduced into their body, and so these insects die. When they died, they decompose, and ultimately these plants get their nutrients from them. Third is symbiosis, and symbiosis means living together. So it's a mutual and a close association of living organisms onto each other, right? What happens in this case? Either both of the living organisms are benefited, either only one of the organism is benefited, or one is benefited and the other is not harmed, neither benefited. So we are going to study about them in our next lecture. I hope this is clear to everyone. Stay home, stay safe. Bye bye.